Okay, guys, we are going to pick up with part 2 of Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Last Straw. I left off on page 37, so I'm going to read for about 20 more minutes and we'll take a break then. Okay, Monday. Well, my week got off to a rough start. When I got out of bed, Mom's bathrobe wasn't where it usually is, hanging on my doorknob. I asked Mom if she took the robe back, but she said she didn't. So I have a feeling Dad had something to do with it. A couple of days ago, I figured out a way to combine the bathrobe experience with the heating vent experience, and I don't think Dad approved of my idea. I figure he either hid the robe or got rid of it. Now that I think of it, Dad made a run to the Goodwill bin last night after dinner, so that's probably not a good sign. Anyway, if Dad did get rid of the robe, it wouldn't be the first time he's thrown out someone's personal property. You know how Manny has been trying to quit using his pacifier? Yesterday morning, Dad got rid of every single one of Manny's binkies. Well, Manny totally freaked out. The only way Mom could get him to calm down was to dig out his old blanket, this thing he calls Tingy. Tingy started off as a blue blanket that Mom knitted for Manny's first birthday, and it was love at first sight. Manny carried that thing around with him everywhere he went. He wouldn't even let Mom take it away from him so she could wash it. It started falling apart, and by the time Manny was 2, his blanket basically was a couple of pieces of yarn held together by raisins and boogers. I think that's when Manny started calling his blanket Tingy. For the past couple of days, Manny's been dragging Tingy around the house just like he did when he was a baby, and I've been trying to stay out of his way as much as possible. Wednesday. I'm getting really tired of walking to school every day, so this morning I asked Mom if she would drive me and Rowley. The reason I didn't ask her sooner is because Mom's car is covered in all these embarrassing bumper stickers, and kids at my school are brutal when it comes to that kind of thing. I've tried scraping the bumper stickers off, but whatever kind of glue they put on those things is meant to last until the end of time. This one says, my child is a graduate of Tender Cuddles Preschool. Today, me and Rowley got a ride from Mom, but I told her to let us out behind the school. Are you sure this is where I'm supposed to drop you off? Yep, thanks for the ride. Well, I made the dumb mistake of leaving my backpack in the car, so Mom brought it to me in 4th period. And of course, she picked today to finally start going to the gym. You forgot this, sweetie. It was just my luck, too. 4th period is the only time I have a class with Holly Hills, and I've been trying to make a good impression on her this year. I figure this incident probably set me back about 3 weeks. I'm not the only one who's trying to impress Holly Hills either. I think just about every boy in my class has a crush on her. Holly is the 4th prettiest girl in the class, but the top 3 all have boyfriends. So a lot of guys like me are doing everything they can to get in good with her. I've been trying to come up with an angle to separate myself from the rest of the goobers who like Holly, and I think I finally figured it out. Humor. See, the kids in my class are like Neanderthals when it comes to jokes. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, here's the kind of thing that passes for comedy at my school. Trip, har har har. Anytime Holly's in the area, I make sure I use my best material. I've been using Rowley as my comedy partner, and I've actually trained him on a couple of pretty decent jokes. What you doing? Eating chocolate. Where'd you get it? A doggy dropped it. The only problem is Riley's starting to get a little greedy about who gets to say what, so I don't know if this partnership is going to work out long term. Can I do the doggy dropped it part? I don't think so. Friday. Well, I learned my lesson about getting a ride from Mom, so I'm back to walking to school. But when I was heading home from Riley this afternoon, I seriously didn't think I had the energy to make it up the hill to my house. So I asked Riley if he'd give me a piggyback ride. Riley didn't exactly jump at the idea, so I had to remind him that we're best friends, and this is the kind of thing that best friends do for each other. He finally caved when I offered to carry his backpack for him. I have a feeling this was a one-time thing though, because Riley was completely wiped out by the time he dropped me off at my house. You know, if the school is going to take away our ride home, the least they can do is install a ski lift on our hill. I've emailed the principal about 5 times with my suggestion, but I haven't heard anything back yet. When I got to my house, I was pretty tired, too. My new thing is that I take a nap every day after school. In fact, I live for my naps. Sleeping after school is the only way I can really recharge my batteries. And on most days, the second I get home, I'm in bed. I'm actually kind of becoming an expert at sleeping. Once I'm out, I can sleep through just about anything. The only person I know who's better at sleeping than me is Roderick. And here's the reason I say that. A couple of weeks ago, Mom had to order Roderick a new bed because he'd worn his out. So the furniture guys came to take his old mattress and box springs away. When they came, Roderick was in the middle of his after-school nap. So they took his bed away, and he just slept on the floor right in the middle of his empty bed frame. The thing I'm worried about is that Dad is going to ban our after-school naps. I'm starting to get the feeling that he's sick of waking the two of us up for dinner every night. Tuesday. Well, I hate to admit this, but I think my naps are starting to have an effect on my grades. See, I used to do my homework when I got home from school, and then I watched TV at night. Lately, I've been trying to do my homework while I watch TV, and sometimes that doesn't work out too good. To make sure Carissa sticks around for another week, dial 492 or text the word Carissa now. Beep, beep, beep. I had this 4-page biology paper due today, but last night I kind of got caught up in this show I was watching. So I had to try to write the whole thing in the computer lab during recess today. I didn't have a lot of time to do any research, so I played with the margins and the font size to stretch what I had to 4 pages. But I'm pretty sure Ms. Nolan is going to call me on it. Let's check out his essay. Chimps, a 4-page paper by Greg Heffley. This is a chimpanzee, or chimp for short. Chimps are the subject of the paper you're holding in your hands right now. Chimps are supposed to be smart, but I'm not so sure that's true. Get out of the way, chimp. Don't call me chimp, but you are one. Oh yeah. Well, it looks like I'm out of papers, so I guess this is the end. Yesterday, I actually got a 0 on a quiz in geography. But in my defense, it was really hard to study for the quiz and watch football at the same time. To be honest with you, I don't think teachers should be making us memorize all this stuff to begin with, because in the future, everyone is going to have a personal robot that tells you whatever you need to know. Robot, what's the largest estuary in the world? The Ob River in Russia. Thank you very much. Speaking of teachers, today Mrs. Craig was in a really bad mood. That's because the big dictionary that usually sits on her desk was missing. I'm sure someone just borrowed it and forgot to put it back, but the word Mrs. Craig kept using was stole. Mrs. Craig said that if the dictionary wasn't returned to her desk before the end of the period, she was keeping everyone inside for recess. Then she told us she was going to leave the room and that if the culprit returned the dictionary to her desk, there wouldn't be any consequences and there would be no questions asked. Mrs. Craig made Patty Farrell class monitor and left the room. Patty takes her job as class monitor really seriously, and when she's in charge, nobody dares to step out of line. I was just hoping the person who took the dictionary would hurry up and come clean because I had 2 cartons of chocolate milk for lunch. May I please use the lavatory? No. But nobody did come forward. And sure enough, Mrs. Craig stuck to her promise and kept us inside for recess. Then she said she was going to keep us inside every day until the dictionary was returned. Friday. Mrs. Craig has kept us inside for the past 3 days and still no dictionary. Today, Patty Farrell was sick, so Mrs. Craig put Alex Aruda in charge of the room while she was gone. Alex is a good student, but people aren't afraid of Alex the way they are afraid of Patty Farrell. As soon as Mrs. Craig left the room, it was complete pandemonium. A couple of guys who were sick of getting stuck inside for recess every day decided to try and figure out who took Mrs. Craig's dictionary. The first person they interrogated was this kid named Corey Lamb. I think Corey was number 1 on the list of suspects because he's smart and he's always using big words. Corey fessed up to the crime in no time flat, but it turns out he only said he did it because the pressure made him crack. The next kid on the list was Peter Lynn, and before you knew it, Peter was confessing too. I figured it was just a matter of time before those guys cornered me. So I knew I had to think up something fast. I've read enough Sherlock Sammy books to know that sometimes it takes a nerd to get you out of a pinch. And I figured if anyone could crack this case, it was Alex Aruda. So me and a couple of other guys who were worried about getting hassled went over to Alex to see if he could help us out. We told Alex we needed him to solve the mystery of who took Mrs. Craig's dictionary, but he didn't even know what we were talking about. I guess Alex had been so wrapped up in his book that he hadn't even noticed what had been going on around him for the past couple of days. Plus, Alex always stays inside to read during recess, so Mrs. Craig's punishment hadn't had a big effect on his life. Unfortunately, Alex has read his share of Sherlock Sammy books too, so he said he would help us if we paid him $5. Well, that was totally unfair because Sherlock Sammy only charges a nickel. But me and the other guys agreed it was worth it, and we pooled our money, then forked over the $5. We laid out all the facts of the case to Alex, but we didn't know a whole lot. Then we asked Alex if he could get us pointed in the right direction. I expected Alex to start taking notes and spout some scientific mumbo-jumbo, but all he did was close the book he was reading and show the cover to us. And you're not going to believe this, but it was Mrs. Craig's dictionary. Alex said he'd been studying the dictionary to get ready for the state spelling bee next month. Well, that would have been nice to know before we gave him our $5. Anyway, there was no time to waste complaining because Mrs. Craig was going to be back in the room at any second. Corey Lamb grabbed the book from Alex and put it on Mrs. Craig's desk, but she walked in the room right at that moment. Aha! Mrs. Craig ended up going back on her whole no consequences promise, so Corey Lamb is going to be spending the next 3 weeks inside during recess. Looking on the bright side, though, at least he'll have Alex Aruda to keep him company. Okay, moving on to February in the Wimpy Kid's diary. Tuesday. Yesterday in the cafeteria, when I emptied out my lunch bag, I got 2 fruits and no snacks. This was a pretty big problem. Mom always packs cookies or sugar wafers or something in my lunch bag, and it's usually the only thing I eat. So I had no energy for the rest of the day. When I got home, I asked Mom what the deal was with the two fruits thing. She said she always buys enough treats to last us the whole week, so one of us boys must have taken the snacks out of the bin in the laundry room. I'm sure Mom thinks I'm the one stealing the snacks, but believe me, I already learned my lesson about doing that. Last year I took treats out of the bin, but I totally paid the price for it when I opened my lunch bag at school and pulled out Mom's substitute snack. Would one of you gentlemen care to trade something for a pack of croutons? Today at lunch it was the exact same thing, 2 fruits and no snacks. Like I said, I really depend on the boost I get from that sugar. I almost fell asleep in Mr. Watson's class in 6th period, but luckily I snapped awake when my head hit the back of my chair. When I got home, I told Mom it wasn't fair someone else was eating the treats and I was having to suffer. But she said she was going to go grocery shopping until the end of the week. Or she wasn't going grocery shopping until the end of the week, and that I just have to make do until then. Dad wasn't any help either. When I complained to him, he just made up a penalty for anyone caught stealing snacks, which was no drums and no video games for a week. So obviously he thinks it's either me or Roderick. Like I said, it's not me, but I figured Dad might be right about Roderick. When Roderick went to the bathroom after dinner, I walked down to his room to see if I could find any wrappers or crumbs. But while I was poking around in Roderick's room, I heard him coming downstairs. I had to hide quick because for some reason, Roderick gets really bent out of shape when he catches me in his room like he did yesterday. Right before Roderick got to the bottom of the stairs, I dove into his desk cabinet and shut the door. Roderick walked in the room, then flopped on his bed and called his friend Ward. Roderick and Ward talked forever, and I was starting to think I might have to spend the night in that desk. Roderick and Ward got into a pretty heated debate about whether or not a person could throw up while standing on their head, and I started to feel like I was going to throw up myself. Luckily, right around then, the phone's battery died. When Roderick went upstairs to get the square phone, I made a run for it. The snack thing wouldn't even be an issue if I had money. If I did, I could just buy something from the vending machine at school every day. At the moment, though, I'm kind of broke. That's because I wasted all my money on some junk I can't even use. About a month ago, I saw these ads in the back of one of my comic books, and I sent away for a couple of things that were supposed to totally change my life. We have x-ray goggles, see-through walls, metal, clothes, personal hovercraft, zoom around town on a cushion of air, float 6 feet above the ground, print your own money with the cash machine, insert a blank piece of paper and roll out a $5 bill, throw your voice, ventriloquism kit. I started receiving my stuff in the mail about 2 weeks ago. The cash machine turned out to be some stupid magic trick where you have to insert your own money in this secret slot for it to work. And that wasn't good because I was really counting on that thing to get me out of having to find a job when I grow up. The x-ray goggles just made you see blurry and cross-eyed, so that was a bust too. The throw your voice thing didn't work at all, even though I followed the instructions in the book. But the item I had the highest hopes for was the personal hovercraft. I figured getting home after school would be a breeze once my hovercraft finally showed up in the mail. Well, I got the package today, but there wasn't a hovercraft inside. There was just a blueprint for how to build a hovercraft, and I got stuck on step 1. Step 1, acquire an industrial twin turbine engine. I just can't believe the people who write those ads can get away with lying to kids like that. I thought about hiring a lawyer to sue those guys, but lawyers cost money. And like I said before, the cash machine was a piece of garbage. Okay, so that's about another 20-minute session. Um, we will pick it up for part 3 on the next video.